If you study software development and try to write your own software and reflect on your own development and wonder about how you're growing, you will develop. That might sound obvious, but it isn't necessarily going to happen unless you make it a goal. You are allowed to pursue software for the money. Less now. Now it's a lot more difficult to pursue software only for the money. The reason is software existed as a high paying salary for long enough for people to describe how parts of the process could be gamified. Now there are enough people who want to navigate the gamified parts that the remaining dimensions of software engineering tend to be dimensions of software engineering that you would only care about if you cared enough about them. Dimensions of software engineering that you would only be aware of if you cared enough to actually study. In society, we have described PhDs as doctorates of philosophy. Why do we study philosophy? What's the point of so many people spending so much money only to study philosophy? Presumably, there are differences between subjects, so presumably, someone studying philosophy for however long would yield different results in a context where the goal is to produce novel results. Academia is one branch of human development or societal development, and software is another. You can study the philosophy of software, and there are a lot of resources that make different parts of that accessible. If you study the textbook Cracking the Coding Interview, then you can see how some people have recommended studying the philosophy and pragmatics of computer science and software engineering for about a decade. More than a decade now, not sure how old that book is. The main premise is when we have language to describe our ideas, we can navigate them more easily and develop them. If we don't have language to identify what we're trying to increment, we won't be able to consistently increment the dimensions we aren't acknowledging. Without language for describing systems, some patterns might scale and some patterns might diminish, and we won't be able to describe how we're attempting to navigate those dynamics. It is also possible to write software that matches the subjects that you're learning. Like you can create a website that's meant to be a wiki for the kinds of things that you find interesting. In the process of trying to represent something that you care about, you might notice that some dimensions are easier to consistently represent than others. You might notice that HTML is useful for representing some concepts, and JavaScript is useful for representing others. You can reflect on paradigms of programming languages and wonder about which systems are easily made into stories with each paradigm. Is it easier to reference objects in object-oriented code? Or is it easier to reference lines in procedural code? Which systems are easier to share across generations? Why is it that when we structure information in some ways, it's easier for some patterns of cognition to align with them? The engineering component of software engineering is finding consistent ways to wonder about these and scale their consideration across a society, across a note, pardon, across a network, a socially integrated graph. And the advantage of going to an engineering school is you can see which dimensions of rigor are rewarded by which branches of engineering typically. Cheers.